welcome to part 3.
This guy's name's Hattori, not Horatio. Ordinarily, I would have just simply laughed this gaffe off and allowed it to join the ranks of some of my favorite review mistakes, from my own Kirsten Dunst's fake real singing voice to Doug Walker's bulldozer forklift. The only reason I'm bringing this up in review is that this mistake seemed to anger people more than just making them laugh at me. I've gotten hate mail about it. Seriously.
Honestly, as a guy who's making his movie review debut, arguing with you, I don't care. Move on.
So after Emu Thermos's character obtains the sword, she hops a flight to Tokyo. And it is sadly only here that I realized that this could actually have been a 2-part review. Nothing really happens in our endlessly long final act. Most of the opening time is spent watching people either driving to a destination or walking through a room for 5 hours.
Hey, I was drooling over her. Do you mind? I want more screen time with Go-Go. I don't care if she's fucking knitting.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more
Go-Go you bar.
But eventually we reach our climactic showdown. All 100 billion of them. And the title of this chapter could have easily been substituted for another title: It Never Ends. Not since Neo versus the Smiths in Reloaded has a fight scene been so tedious and so very endless. And while this scene is definitely more fun and doesn't take itself nearly as seriously as Reloaded, the problem still remains. We start with her picking off one or two of the cronies' cronies before getting to the bodyguard who, what do you know, fucking dies like the rest.
And I haven't been this heartbroken since Zev died. The real Zev, neither the shitty replacements they got. Okay, sobbing aside, do you know what happens when you completely cut the super epic action scenes in a super epic action movie? The Expendables. That's what happens. Look forward to my review of that fucking cock tease of a movie.
Then after that, the room is flooded with Oren's personal army, the Crazy 88. 88 men with 88 swords. And it all could have gone just fine if she had traded all of them for one man with one gun.
Well, okay. That, yeah, you can involve a whole lot of guns if you really want to, but then we'd be watching Equilibrium, not Kill Bill. I was having a good time watching Kill Bill, but if you'd rather watch Equilibrium, then just watch Equilibrium. It's a good movie, incidentally. I thought it's a lot of fun. But it's not Kill Bill. Yeah. Also, guns aren't magic. Just because you have a gun doesn't mean you can successfully kill someone. My mother dated a police officer for a while. He's from Britain, so he might be somewhat biased. But he always told me he was more afraid of a guy with a knife than a guy with a gun. Because most people with a gun, when they're in that kind of situation, will miss. Guy with a knife won't. So yeah, for what that's worth.
One person versus many persons is always fun to watch for a little while, but the longer it goes on, the longer you wish they would just hurry up and get to the final showdown, because every minute spent here makes that final showdown less and less plausible. I'll explain what I mean later on. Sadly, however, the fight drags on until at one point, it just stops. All of Oren's baddies are defeated, and then it's just Thurman and Lou.
Now, as some of you did notice, I cut out a lot there. Please, please, please watch Confused Matthew's review in its entirety. There's a lot I have to cut out because I just have nothing to say in response. And, again, watch Confused Matthew because he makes good movie reviews. Now, I rather liked watching the bride slice through each and every member of the Crazy 88. I liked seeing the crowd diminish one at a time. It kind of reminds me of a lot of the games I've played where I've had to deal with a buttload of bad guys all ganging up on me at once and I have to take them out one at a time. If anyone's played the game TIE Fighter, you know what I mean. If anyone hasn't played the game TIE Fighter, fucking download that shit. Now, I can kind of understand why you'd feel a sense of exhaustion here, partially because you're not terribly invested in this movie. But any sense of exhaustion, I feel, just adds to the epicness of the struggle. It seems a lot like this scene.
60! We dropped at least 60, wouldn't you say?
Well, that leaves only 3,940.
Also, who could think that this finale is anything other than beautiful? Injecting humor at this point and making it work? God damn, it's really, really hard to inject humor into a very dark and bloody movie. But Quentin Tarantino does it masterfully, unlike George Lucas shoving Jar Jar Binks down our throats and up our ass when we don't want to fucking see him at all. This is funny.
This is what you get for fucking around, Yakuzas! Go home to your mother!
And here we reach a showdown that has had so much buildup that the antagonist actually stole the entire film from the protagonist just to get us to this point. And thanks to all the fights that came before it, all the buildup was for nothing. The showdown is completely deflated now. The Black Mamba not only just sliced and diced her way through this woman's bodyguard, who would have to be either just as good, if not better at combat in order to protect someone who can clearly take care of herself, but she also hacked and slashed her way through this woman's personal army. Defeating 88 people with swords is a damn near impossible feat, but going from 88 to 1? Quentin, you just shot your entire ending fight scene square in the foot.
No. Fighting the queen of the Tokyo underworld, a woman so fucking scary, she gets such an epic backstory, it is hard. It's difficult. There's a lot of tension in the air. Having to do so after fighting 88 bodyguards, that's fucking hard. People get tired. They get bloody. Evidently.
刀は疲れ知らず。あんたも少し力が残ってるといいけどね。でなきゃ5分と身が持たないよ。
Personally, I've kicked the shit out of black belts in sparring matches. Not because I was better than them in any sense of the word, and certainly not since leaving the dojo. I'm ridiculously out of shape. But they had to fight pretty much everyone they were training. I didn't. I was a trainee. I could burn myself out in a single match. I could go at 110% and just leave myself a wreck after it and fight at their level. They couldn't. They had to pace themselves. You can really, really amplify the difficulty if you're playing smart. And speaking of playing smart, have you ever played a video game? Just because you've kicked the shit out of the bad guy's entire army, does that make the main bad guy any less intimidating? No. No, it doesn't. It makes them more intimidating.
All of the tension has been completely removed from this conflict now. The Black Mamba beat an army. There's no way she's gonna lose to this stupid little girl now.
Gee, this looks pretty tense. That looked like a pretty grievous wound.
Silly
there.
Caucasian girl likes to play with samurai swords.
Moving on.
And she doesn't. Oren dies. Good riddance. In the end, the Black Mamba leaves the second-in-command alive so that she can relay the message to Bill that she's coming for all of them, which means that at long last, Lucy Liu's movie is finally over. Maybe now Uma Thurman's movie can finally begin. Have you ever had the experience of driving really fast on the highway and then lifting your foot up and slamming down on the brakes? That is exactly what this movie is. No momentum carries over from one film to another in this series with regard to the pace. Which brings up, once again, another balance issue. The first film, as unfocused as it was at least exciting to some degree, even if it was just on a superficial action degree. This film is incredibly talky and boring.
I kind of agree with you. Upon the first viewing, I did get that sense of shock partially through the film. Upon subsequent viewings, that feeling went away, so I don't really hold it too much against this movie, although I do recognize the charge. And as for the talky and boring charges, I know you like those movies too, you said so later. Yeah, I loved Death Proof and Jackie Brown. What can I say?
Here is where we actually see Bill for the first time, and the conversation that takes place between he and the bride is somewhat mixed. It's okay in some parts and just completely off the subject in others. But this is one of the only times in the movie where knowing what is going to happen actually makes the scene more tense. We know that everyone at this rehearsal is going to die their asses off, but now we don't know exactly when or how that is going to happen. And as Bill lulls the bride into a false sense of security and even interacts with her new husband-to-be, Tarantino finally manages to pull off a scene of real tension. I think if he had spent time letting us know who the bride's friends and her fiancé actually are in the last movie, instead of, you know, just Lucy Liu, this scene would have worked a lot better.
Moving to El Paso, working in a used record store, going to the movies with Tommy. Clipping coupons.
Yeah, this sounds like a thriller of a movie. Cut the Queen of the Tokyo Underworld crap. Let's go with this.
So anyway, Bill explains that she sliced through O-Ren and her army using the Hattori Hanzo sword. Apparently Bud had a Hanzo sword himself, but pawned it as he no longer had any use for it, apparently. Bill tells him to prepare himself for the bride's inevitable attempt at revenge, and then takes his leave, so then Bud goes to work. He goes to work.
Not exactly that you're as useless as an asshole right here. Well, guess what, buddy? I think you just fucking convinced me. Let's go to the calendar. It's calendar time. Calendar time for Buddy. Okay, you working tomorrow? Yeah. No, you're not. You don't even know what fucking day you work.
Oh no. No, we're gonna watch this whole thing.
Here, you're not working tomorrow. You're working Wednesday. Here you are. There you go. Working Thursday? Yeah. I don't think so. Friday. There's your name. If you say so. There used to be your name. Okay? Saturday. There used to be your name. Monday, you go to... Here, how about that? Fucking with your cash is the only thing you kids seem to understand. Okay?
Customers wear hats.
I'm not the boss of the customers. I'm the boss of you. And I'm telling you that I want you to keep that shit kicker hat at home.
For fuck's sake! See, this is why I say that even when compared to Tarantino's other films that I just didn't like, this is in a whole other class of bad. I mean, I wasn't the biggest fan of Jackie Brown in the world, but say what you will about that movie, at least it stayed on point.
Now, I know you're not invested in this movie, you're not invested in its characters, and therefore you're not picking up on the subtlety. But I really want to explain what I feel when I watch this scene. I really feel pity for Bud. Not in the sense that, you know, he's pathetic and he's a loser or anything like that. Far from it. Bud is the kind of badass us beta males wish we could be in our deepest, darkest fantasies. He's a killer without remorse. He is fucking bulletproof. He eats napalm for breakfast. And here he is, taking bullshit from some perverted little cokehead. Have you ever been subjected to the bullshit of someone who is clearly your inferior? That's what's going on in this scene, and it's truly awful to watch. I was really rooting for Bud after this. I hope he made his million. I hope he found a way to get out. Unfortunately, that psychotic bitch, Elle, killed him. And that made me hate her all the more. If you really want to know the emotion I feel for Bud, I recommend you listen to the song Gus the Polar Bear from Central Park by the Tragically Hip.
What's troubling Gus?